This portable cabin fits in my car. I made these panels that I can put together at my campsite without any tools. This cabin is very comfortable to camp in and to hang out in. It's also a great place to get some work done. When it's time to go, I can just pack it back up in my car and take it home. Hello, my name is Steve, and this is the first video where I'm showing this portable cabin that I built. What you see behind me is not the cabin. I made these freestanding walls a few years ago to hide the kitchen in this apartment that I live in, and the window is just a computer monitor, but that's a story for another day. I did use some of the same materials and finish ideas for the cabin, though. I will be making plans for this and other cabin designs that fit in different vehicles and maybe use different materials or different design techniques that might be closer to what you or somebody you know is looking for. There's a link in the description to get notified when new plans come out or to tell me what design might work best for you. Today's video is from the very first time I took this cabin out. This was this past Memorial Day back in May. I started designing and building the cabin last fall and had the floor, walls, and roof finished by New Year's. Skiing and work got in the way for the first few months of 2024. And before I knew it, it was late spring and the last few days of the ski season at Mary Jane. I woke up early on this morning with a chance of snow in the forecast, and I really wanted to take the cabin out in some snow. I still needed to finish making the door and attach the doors and windows. I got up early and finished enough by late afternoon to give it a shot. I scrambled to gather the rest of my camping gear, food, and firewood, and loaded everything up in the car. I got to my campsite a little before dark. It was raining with some occasional sleet and wet snowflakes mixed in. I picked a spot in the snow to make level, then carried all the panels about 100 feet or 30 meters over a snowdrift and leaned them all against some nearby trees. By the time I took a break for dinner, it was dark out. After getting the floor panels somewhat level, it took 29 more minutes to assemble the wall and roof panels. There are 17 panels, including 3 floor panels and 4 roof panels, the heaviest of which is 45 pounds or 20 kilos. So basically, this is a car camping cabin with a wood stove that I can use in place of a tent. As you will see later, you can also use the cabin as an office or studio. By the time I was finished, the floor was soaked and some of my clothes was pretty wet too. Next, I put the stove in the cabin, started a fire, and shuttled the rest of my gear and firewood from my car into the cabin. Earlier this winter, I had already burned in the stove to get rid of the manufacturing oils and the galvanized coating on the chimney pipes. I don't have any video of this part, but I put a couple of clamps on the center ridge beam and tied a cord between them to hang my clothes to dry. Everything dried up pretty quick. At this point, I had not finished making slots to lock the windows closed, but I planned on keeping them open anyways for fresh air. I hung out by the fire for a while and then climbed into bed for the first time in this cabin. But then all I could think about was all this color you see on the panels was from slopping a bunch of vinegar with a little steel wool dissolved in it all over these boards. Most of it was done months before, but a little was done in the last few days. Every time I stained these boards, the smell reminded me of the Long John Silver's restaurant that my family would get when I was a kid, and these little vinegar packets that we would put on the fish. A couple days after this camp, I started craving Long John Silver's and found one down in the Denver area and had to go. It was just like I remembered. It was a pretty tasty treat, but I try not to eat fast food anymore. I actually slept in my car last night instead of in this cabin. Bears have been out of hibernation since about mid-March. On the cabin, I couldn't smell the vinegar, but I knew how much I had used, and with my head and feet just inches from the open windows, I couldn't help but think that this might smell like a restaurant to a bear. It snowed an inch overnight, and there were no bear tracks to be seen. A couple weeks after this, I set up the cabin alongside an alpine creek and slept inside for the first time. That will be the next video. I got up and started another fire in the stove and moved my sleeping stuff back into the cabin to sleep a while longer. It takes just a few minutes to warm it up inside, and it is so comfy. Over the last few years, every once in a while, I would try to find something on the internet or try to think of some quick and dirty way to make something a little more substantial than just a tent. Whenever I was tossing around the portable shelter idea, I had always been thinking very cheap, mostly because I just didn't have money to spend on something like this. Last fall, I made an extra $900 for helping one of my friends build a backyard studio, and with that cash in my pocket, I started thinking a little bigger. One night shortly after that, as I was laying in bed thinking, I got back up and went out to my car, put down the passenger seat, and took some measurements. I spent the next couple hours sketching, calculating, and looking up some prices for materials. I finally went to sleep late thinking that this might actually work. Maybe not the wisest thing I could have done with the money, but since it seemed like such a cool and new idea that was not really on the internet yet, that I thought it would be nice to try to actually build it and at least get it out there while I'm still around and still able to do something like this. I already had tools and carpentry experience from a couple ski town condo remodels that I have done. I also had plenty of design and engineering experience from some of the jobs and projects that I've worked on. It took a couple weeks of brainstorming and sleeping on the idea before I settled on the basic design. Then I went out and bought much of the wood that I would need to let it start drying. Over the next few weeks, I experimented with a bunch of different panel sizes and panel configurations, looking for the best balance between space used in my car, space left over for gear, the assembled cabin size, usability for camping and as a workspace, interior aesthetics, exterior aesthetics, availability of materials, cost, portability, weight, strength, dimensional stability and straightness of the panels, durability, safety, ease of panel construction, and ease of assembly at the campsite. That's a lot of competing factors, and the final design has interior dimensions of 5 feet by just over 7 feet, or 1.52 by 2.16 meters, which is the same size as the bathroom in the apartment that I live in, excluding the tub. The space is also about the same size, or a little bigger, than a two-person tent, and tall enough to stand up in. I liked the plans I had on my computer, but I still wondered what it might feel like to hang out in a space that size. But rather than sleep in my bathroom, as a final proof of concept, I built a fort, clamping boards and blankets against the wall in my apartment that you saw near the beginning of this video, at the same dimensions as the would-be cabin. Then I put a box in there for the stove, my camp chair, and my sleeping pad, and I slept in there. Happy with how it felt, and with what seemed like the hard part out of the way, I started cutting, distressing, and sanding a lot of boards. Sanding turned out to be my least favorite part of the build. I sanded a lot, probably way more than I needed to, but I really like how all the rounded edges look and feel. I filmed as many steps as I could so I can put together a construction video one of these days. I am going skiing this afternoon, but since it's a cooler day, I have some time to kill before the snow softens up. The river is just a couple minutes away, so I'll snowshoe down and take a look. When I got back, I got my computer out of my car and tested out a couple of different desk configurations. I designed all the pieces for the bed to also work as a desk, either along the back wall or along a side wall for a better view, or to move out of the sun, or to just be right next to the open door. Besides having a warm place to camp, I also liked the idea that I could use this space to get some work done. That part was way cooler than I thought it would be. When I was designing the panels, I paid special attention to the placement of the windows to be in the best viewing position when sitting at the desk. I might not get much work done in here though. I spent more time looking out the window than getting any real work done. If I could get Starlink, I could take this office anywhere. Well, I can still take it anywhere, just no internet. This all did cost more than the $900 that I started with, and in a later video I will break down what it cost me to make everything. I hope this is giving you some ideas, and just maybe you will build something like this too. I love it. It does take room to store it and some effort to move it, but the look and feel of being in there, especially with all the windows and the stove, made spending time in there just awesome. I can't wait for the next trip. There is so much more to talk about in this cabin, more questions to answer, more places to go, more weather conditions to test out, more things to add and to try, and a bunch of stories to share along the way from living and playing in the mountains. Thank you for watching, and check out these next videos. I'll catch you next time.